Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to understanding the strategic moves that define major market players. Today, we are really tearing into the Q1 FY26 investor presentation for Mankind Pharma Limited. Our mission is to trace the company's evolution, from this high-volume, affordable medicines giant to potentially a more specialized, high-margin player. We need to see how their current success is, funding that future pivot.
Exactly. And this quarter, the one ending June 30, 2025, it's a really crucial snapshot. It's the first period where we properly see the integration of their big recent acquisition, BSV Limited, showing up in the numbers. These figures, they really show a company actively trying to, shift its entire DNA.
Absolutely. And that headline nugget, it jumps right out, validates their direction. Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Rajeev Juneja, stated that revenue grew by a massive 24.5% year over year. And the growth engines he mentioned are critical: chronic segment outperformance, strong consumer growth, and of course, the consolidation of BSV.
Right. And when we look at the financial snapshot, that revenue growth, 24.5%, it's matched by operational efficiency. EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. The metric we use for core business profitability, it grew by 25.8% year over year.
Okay.
This kept the EBITDA margin pretty healthy at 23.8%. High growth with maintained margins, that's usually a great sign.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also worth noting they're celebrating 30 years, and they approved an interim dividend of RS1 per share.
Okay, so let's unpack the core engine then, the part that generates the cash for these big pivots. The domestic business. This segment, it's huge, right? Accounts for 87% of total revenue.
That's right.
And it grew by a very strong 19% year over year, hitting, what was it, INR 3,101 crore.
And that domestic growth, it isn't just riding the rising tide of the overall Indian pharmaceutical market, the IPM. They are actively taking market share. Their overall share increased from 4.8% to 4.9% just this quarter.
Okay.
What's fascinating, though, is how they're getting that growth.
Right. Tell us about the volume versus value thing, because that seems like the fundamental distinction for Mankind.
It really is. It's pretty much purely a volume game tied directly to their affordability models.
Okay.
They saw 2.5% volume growth, while the overall IPM volume only grew 1.4%.
Wow.
So that means they are outselling the market by like a factor of 1.8 times just in sheer volume.
1.8 times.
Yes, 1.8x volume lead. It just confirms their strategy. Prioritize affordability, capture market share faster than competitors who might be relying more on price hikes.
And that sustained volume success, that's what gives them the capital, the firepower to execute the long-term plan, which is clearly about this massive shift towards chronic therapies. The source material highlights that Mankind's chronic share jumped by 194 basis points in Q1 FY26. For listeners, that's nearly a 2% increase in the chronic share of their entire portfolio in just one quarter. That is a huge strategic move.
It is huge, and the execution seems successful so far. Their chronic portfolio consistently outperforms the overall IPM chronic segment. They're showing a 1.4x outperformance ratio overall in chronic.
Okay.
And then you look at the really key high growth areas, the figures jump again. 1.5 times outperformance in cardiac, 1.6 times in anti-diabetics. It shows they're really planting flags in those high-value, long-term segments.
Okay, but given this aggressive pivot towards chronic, how sustainable is that affordability first image they built their whole foundation on? Aren't they kind of running the risk of maybe alienating their core acute market by focusing so much on high margin specialty stuff?
Well, that's the critical tension, isn't it? That's the tightrope they're walking. However, looking at the numbers, their acute portfolio is still firing pretty well. They saw anti-infectives grow at 9.1%, which is still a 1.6x outperformance compared to the market.
Right.
And respiratory was even stronger, 17.8% growth, a 1.5x outperformance. So they seem to be using their historical acute foundation not just as a cash cow, but as like a robust platform that's still maintaining momentum.
So they're managing the pivot while somehow keeping their historical volume leadership intact.
Precisely. And that's why their overall rank is still number 2 by volume, even if they're number 4 by value in the IPM. And maybe the most powerful statistic, the one that really speaks to Dr. Trust, is that they've consistently maintained the number 1 rank in prescriptions for the last 8 years straight.
8 years. Wow. Okay. Let's talk about the next major pillar then, the consumer healthcare, or CH segment. Now, while it contributes a smaller slice, about 8% of total revenue, it seems like a massive growth area, showing 15% year-over-year revenue growth to INR 237 crore in Q1.
Yeah, this segment was really important because it It basically converts massive brand visibility directly into cash.
Right.
We need to look at two things here: their distribution shift and their financial discipline.
Okay.
On the distribution side, they're successfully pivoting towards modern retail channels. The share they get from modern trade and e-commerce channels grew by about 50% year over year.
50%.
Yeah, it now accounts for 11% of the segment's revenue, up from 9% last year. So that shift is working.
And the power of the brands themselves in the segment is, well, frankly, incredible when you look at the market shares.
Oh, it's market capture through saturation, pretty much. Manforce Condom is the #1 brand, holds 28% market share.
28%.
And Preganews, the pregnancy test kit, #1 with an astounding 87% share.
87.
Yeah, they actually have 4 brands ranked #1 in their respective categories. And this translates directly into, active consumer spending. GasOFast, for example, saw a 36% secondary sales growth this quarter alone.
Okay, and this must bring us to the financial discipline you mentioned earlier. All this scale and brand power, it must generate exceptional cash flow.
It absolutely does. And this is the mechanism, the engine that allows them to fund those big specialty pivots we talked about. They boast what they call best-in-class cash conversion metrics. The ratio of cash flow from operations CFO to EBITDA hovered around 80% during the last fiscal year, FY25.
80% cash conversion.
Which basically means for every dollar they earn in operating profit, they are exceptionally good at turning it into actual deployable cash. Cash for acquisitions, for R&D, for expansion. That efficiency, that's really the bedrock of their big BSV move.
Okay, that makes the transition to exports and the M&A impact seamless then. The domestic business generates the cash, and that cash fuels the future through strategic acquisitions like BSV. And that massive headline number for the quarter, the 81.1% year-over-year growth in the exports business,
Yep.
that's pretty much the direct result of consolidating BSV Limited.
It is. BSV is absolutely critical because it represents that leap into specialty and super specialty products. We're talking about really high entry barrier areas: fertility, women's health, immunoglobulins, recombinant technology, niche biologics, critical care.
Right.
Think about just the logistical jump, moving from selling millions of affordable, simple, acute treatments to maybe managing a small batch of high-complexity biologics. It's a different world.
That's the future vision, yeah. But the present reality is interesting. The source notes that 86%
86%, yeah.
of the acquired BSV domestic business is currently classified as acute. So while BSV is meant to be the super specialty lever, its current revenue mix actually looks quite similar to Mankind's historical strength.
That's the challenge right there.
Yeah.
The real value, arguably, lies in the platform. The R&D capabilities, the high entry barrier portfolio BSV owns. Not necessarily its immediate domestic revenue breakdown today.
Okay.
We can see the integration is moving fast, though. The women's health prescription integration, things like field force, product portfolio optimization, that's apparently largely complete already.
And this push for specialization isn't solely reliant on BSV, is it? It's also pretty evident in Mankind's strategic use of in-licensing deals to sort of leapfrog into crucial super specialty segments.
Exactly.
They're partnering with global leaders to basically acquire complex, high-margin niche products right off the shelf, almost.
Yeah, and we have some great examples of those deals in the presentation. There's AstraZeneca's Symbicort for premium inhalation therapies. There's Novartis's Krenslo, that's the drug inclisiran,
Inclisiran, okay.
which represents the absolute latest generation of lipid-lowering injectables. And Takeda's Vonoprazan for GERD treatment. These are, state-of-the-art products that immediately move Mankind up the value chain. It saves them the huge time and expense of developing these things from scratch to novo development.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to make sense of this? If we synthesize these pillars, the domestic volume engine, the robust consumer cash generation, and this aggressive specialty pivot, what does the long-term roadmap actually look like?
Well, the roadmap seems to confirm their commitment to their core strengths while aggressively building that future capability. Core strength #1 is definitely their scale, driven by affordability, which is underpinned by one of the largest distribution networks in the country. We're talking over 13,000 stockists. That network size alone is a powerful entry barrier, especially for anyone trying to scale quickly in, say, rural India.
Right. And looking ahead, the strategy seems twofold: market expansion and product evolution. Is that fair?
That's a good way to put it, precisely. For expansion, the plan is clearly to increase penetration in metros and Tier I cities. That's where the specialty market really thrives, where the spending power is.
Okay.
And for product evolution, they want to keep growing that consumer healthcare business by strategically shifting their models, moving from RX,
Yeah.
just pure prescription,
Yeah.
to OTX,
Yeah.
and maybe ultimately to full OTC, true over-the-counter.
That OTX model is really vital but often misunderstood. Can you maybe walk us through that RX to OTX to OTC transition quickly?
Sure, yeah. It's essentially a staged process they use to maximize sales channels for established brands. It means taking brands that previously needed a strict doctor's prescription, the RX, and moving them to a status where pharmacists are authorized, even encouraged, to recommend them without a prescription. That's OTX, or over-the-counter by prescription sometimes.
Got it. So it empowers the pharmacist.
Exactly. It immediately opens up massive new sales channels by empowering the chemist at the point of sale. And it's often the crucial stepping stone before a brand becomes a fully accessible mass-market over-the-counter or OTC product that anyone can buy. This approach significantly expands their reach and revenue potential on brands that already have strong recognition.
Okay, that makes sense. And finally, the cornerstone of this whole future strategy seems to be R&D.
It has to be. They explicitly plan to increase their focus on R&D, leveraging that newly acquired BSV tech platform alongside their existing capabilities. The goal is crystal clear. Build high entry barrier complex products, the kind that can sustain high margins for, decades potentially.
So this was definitely a quarter of explosive intentional growth. You can really see where the domestic cash engine successfully funded that strategic pivot towards the high-growth chronic and super specialty segments. It truly paints a picture of a company evolving its product mix but using its massive volume advantage almost like a shield while it does it.
Right. And that successful evolution brings us, I think, to our provocative thought for you to consider. The company is actively, strategically moving from low-complexity mass-market scale towards highly complex niche growth, mainly via BSV and those specialty in-licensing deals. Now, if 86% of the acquired BSV domestic business is currently acute, how long will it realistically take for that newly integrated R&D platform to successfully shift that acquired entity's product mix, shift it towards the high-margin, long-term chronic or super specialty treatments they want? And crucially, what does that timeline mean for competitors who are already well entrenched in those niche fields over, say, the next 5 years?
That's the tension, isn't it? Sitting right at the heart of this whole integration story. The future of the organization really rides on the success of that specialized R&D platform. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this gave you the strategic insight you needed.